So the idea of this series
Yeah.
specifically for me was that I wanted to interview like people from our class just within the first year of graduating to see like what you've learned, what you do differently, what
Yeah.
you'd say to somebody who's graduating now that would make a difference for them.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have that.
No,
And
no.
I've made so many mistakes.
Yeah. Well, they're not mistakes, are they? They're just like learnings.
Yeah, I like that. You're very good at reframing. You sure you don't want to go into psychology?
Well, it feels like you are when you're an osteopath.
Oh my gosh. Hi everyone. So today I'm joined by Bethany Elliott, or Beth. It's very strange calling you Bethany.
Yeah,
I've
that's
never
my
called you
professional
Bethany.
name.
Is it? Okay, we'll stick to that then. So I'm joined today by Bethany Elliott, who is an osteopath and has lots of different hats. So I'm really excited to talk to you because we obviously were in class together for 4
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
Gosh, that feels like a long time.
yeah.
And then we graduated together as well. So that was fun.
And we lived together for a year.
And we lived together. How did we survive all of that?
Yeah. Just about. We just survived it.
Gosh. So what I wanted to talk to you about was, so we both studied at the British College of Osteopathic Medicine.
Mm.
And so I wanted to get sort of your take on what it was like studying, what you've learned afterwards, what you do sort of retroactively in terms of learning, what you've developed, and
Mm.
all of that. This is going to be such a fun conversation.
Yeah.
So what was your experience sort of like after BCom?
I would say I've had a pretty good experience after BCom. I was lucky enough to get a job straight out of graduating. So I managed to have like a little bit of a summer, a few weeks off, and then went straight in towards like the end of August. I'm coming up to a year in my job, which seems crazy, what with everything that's been going on in the world. So I've been working in a clinic in Southeast London. And it's an employed position, which is a little bit different to what what you would think normal osteopaths do. Like I was always under the impression that osteopaths were always self-employed, but for me to be able to stay in London, I needed some like regular income. So found this position that was employed. So I've been working at a clinic now for coming up to a year, and it's been quite an amazing like experience, interesting. I've learned loads. The clinic's been super supportive. It's quite a big clinic, which in a way has been like really good. So there's maybe like 10 or 11 other osteos, all with like differing experience, all treat in different ways. So when my first like month and a bit in the clinic, we did like a bit of an induction week, where I kind of learned the runnings of the clinic. I was told to go and observe all of the different osteopaths so I could see how they treat, which that was really interesting actually, because in clinic at BCom, you kind of would only ever see how your tutors treat, like in a short glimpse, and then how your like buddy would treat. And that was around about it, because we would treat each other, but it would kind of be in like a casual way. So that was really eye-opening, and you nick a few techniques of what other osteopaths do. So yeah, really supportive. And my manager, like the clinic director, he would put on like every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, like a little one-to-one session to see how I was getting on, if I had any questions about any patients that were coming in, or just to see how I was settling in. So it was kind of like a really nice progression from BCom clinic life, because that was kind of like very much hand-holdy. So I felt like I was kind of like jumping at the deep end, because you've not got your phone that's normally in the clinic room at BCom. You can't just call your patient to come in when you don't know what's going on. So yeah, it's good. I think, is that what the question you asked? I've completely forgot what you asked.
And more. So one of the things you said was that obviously there was this transition from when you're in a student clinic where you can literally call a tutor in, like 5 minutes they're there, and you're like, so this is my patient, this is the presentation, and then you're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And well, what's that like? What was that transition like for you from being sort of in this very safe, very contained environment to
Yeah.
literally being thrown in the deep end? Because if I remember correctly, you were busy from the very beginning.
Yeah, yeah. The clinic that I work in is really busy. Which is good in a sense. So my first week, I can't remember how many patients, but I had loads of new patients coming in. And yeah, I remember my maybe like my fourth or fifth initial consultation, and I had no idea what was going on. There was like a few like neurological components going on, and I was just like, oh god, I need that breathing space, where you could just walk out the room, take a moment, like get some ideas from the tutors as well. But you can't do that at all. You can't just be like, hold on a minute, I'm just gonna go outside, take a few breaths and come back in again. So that was, yeah, quite difficult. You have to just my mum always used the phrase, you got to fake it until you make it. So I was kind of just bluffing my way through it. So yeah, that it was, yeah, a little bit tricky, but I think you've just got to have be confident in your own abilities, and that you've been studying for this for 4 years, and that if anything is like red flaggy, just be like, okay, this is what was Tom Hewitson saying? If it quacks like a duck or that kind of thing,
Yeah.
then it's a duck. But if it is, I can't remember the saying, but
Yeah.
if it seems like it's a little bit odd, okay, just flag it up and don't treat, or treat conservatively, and then get the appointment out of the way and done, and then go and do your research afterwards.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember, we sort of observed each other a little bit in clinic, like you said, and I was always impressed by how good you were, because you always came
oh,
across
thank
really
you.
confidently and you were in control of the situation, even though in your head you were probably like running 100
Yeah,
miles an hour thinking,
yeah,
okay, how do all these symptoms add up? What's the differential? What am I testing for? You
yeah.
always made it seem like you were calm.
Cool. That's nice to know, because sometimes on the inside, like you said, it's like, oh, whoa, what's happening here?
Yeah, so it never
It's
came
good.
across like you were like, oh, I don't know what's going on. So
There was
you,
this one patient that I had probably within my first few weeks, and I didn't know what was happening at all. It was a really strange presentation. He'd done something, like the patient had done something in the night, and yeah, it was just a bit strange, like on his like mechanism of injury. And I was like, I have no idea. And I panicked a little bit, and I was like, I knew that my colleague was in the room next door and he didn't have any patients. So I was like, I'm just going to go and talk to my like a senior osteopath. I said, like, I just panicked, like a senior osteopath. And I went out, and he like kind of calmed me down a little bit, and he was like, it's fine, there's nothing like red flaggy going on here, just do this, have you done this, and then do this, just giving me a few tips. And I could go back in, and then I kind of like bluffed it, but not really very well, and the patient didn't rebook in, and I was a bit like disheartened, but then also like, okay, cool, I don't have to treat that person because I don't really know what's going on. But I remember then going and speaking to my the clinic director about it for some advice, and he was like, yeah, don't give me a few tips on like how I shouldn't really say senior osteopath, and I should have just said to speak to my colleague. And I think I've been really lucky in a sense that my like colleagues around me have been super supportive, so that they've been able to tell me like, yeah, you did okay in that like scenario, but you could have done this and this and this.
and how important is it for you to have sort of, and I completely hear what you're saying by saying senior, because that's what I would go to, because we've gone from
Yeah,
students
yeah.
to being osteopaths, and there's this weird transition where you're like, oh, I'm
Mm.
in charge now. I'm
Mm.
in charge of my caseload. I'm in charge of my clinical reasoning. No one's
Yeah,
gonna, check up and make me sign notes. Like,
yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
our
yeah,
notes are signed. That's not what I mean. But like when we're in student clinic, the tutor has to sign off your notes,
yeah.
just in case everyone's wondering. We're doing everything legally. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's this weird transition. And how important was it for you in choosing sort of like where you wanted to work and having other practitioners in the same practice?
It was really important. I didn't want to go off on my own straight away and do my own thing, because I felt like I still had so much more to learn, and I needed that like extra bit of support or input, just to, I don't know, just to build my confidence really. And it has been like super valuable to be in a place where there are lots of osteopaths, like I said, with lots of different experience. And it's not like we talk about our patients all the time, but if you do have a query, then there's somebody there who can talk things through with you. Because I think that's something that I've learned over the past year, is that I'm not meant to know everything. I'm not meant to understand everything. And that's okay. Like, I don't have to be like the top of the top, all knowledgeable, know exactly what's happening in every patient that comes in, and that it's okay to go and ask for help and get advice off people. So yeah, that was a really important aspect for me when looking for places to work, that there'd be like kind of like a mentoring-y type, not role, but somebody there to mentor me or help me if I was in need.
Yeah, because the reality is there's so much more we can learn, and that will come with time.
Yeah, because we just brushed the surface of it really during that 4 years. Even though that 4 years is like really intense and you learn so much, there is still like, I don't think the phrase is like a knowledge gap, but there's like an experience gap.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Because they rammed a lot of knowledge into us at BS.
Yeah.
We were full on 5 days a week,
Yeah.
with lectures, and then you. I always loved, because I remember exactly where you'd sit in the library.
Yes.
So it's not like we were sitting around after lectures. We finished lectures, we went to the library. So it's
Yeah. Not a normal uni experience, was it?
absolutely not. And I mean, I know you had done a previous sort of you had previous experience at sort of higher education as
Yeah,
well. But
yeah.
I'd done a psychology degree before this, and there was no comparison. Like, I had days off before, I had time, I had ample time. And one of the other things you were talking about was having a salaried position. Obviously, you said in London, how expensive it is here. That was quite important for you. Did you find that there were loads of salaried positions available?
I think when I was looking, this was the only one that I could find that was salaried. And I think like some follow some of the like Facebook osteo groups, and from looking on there recently and like over the past few months, I've only seen like a small handful of other salaried positions, a few in London, and then it looked like there was a few further up north, like in Scotland. So I think there's not many. And I think there's like, obviously there's loads of reasons why there's not many. I think you have to be quite a big practice to be able to afford to put people on salary. It's not cheap. But yeah, I needed like the financial stability for my first year at least, so that I could afford to live in London. But yeah, it's interesting being on a salaried role. You obviously don't get paid as much as what you would if you were self-employed. Like the split, you do lose out on quite a bit of money. But I kind of decided that for my second year of working, that I would prefer to be in a bigger practice where I'd get more experience, see more patients. Like I don't really know what other people in our year, how many patients they're seeing a month, but since like the whole of June, I saw like 150 treatments last month, which for me like was quite exhausting but was good. And I think if you're in a smaller clinic, you might not see as many patients, I don't know. So I feel like I've got more experience that way, but not necessarily getting paid as much as what I would do if I was self-employed. But I mean, I decided to take that. It's not really a financial hit, but like
it's like an opportunity cost.
Yes. Yeah.
And so thinking back, would you still have gone for a salaried position?
It's so tricky to say because it's all about like where you work and the job. Like I did have the option for this job that I'm in now to at the beginning to go self-employed first, and then they rolled out everyone in the company to then go on to an employed like contract from March, just because the business was changing and everything. So I did have the choice, but I decided to take the employed position right from the beginning. And looking back at it now, I think, why didn't I take the self-employed at the beginning? But I think I just was nervous about not having enough patience, but actually I was super busy anyway. So but I think that's a really tricky like question, because it really is like dependent on where you're working. Would you be busy? And that's so hard to know. Like you can't really say like, oh yeah, you're going to have however many patients a day or however many patients a month. So
And I totally get that, because in that first year or two, like it's just developing that experience and developing, seeing the patterns with patients and just recognizing them and being able to not just treat, but treat effectively as well.
Yeah.
And if you're on this, the typical model is a self-employed sort of model within the industry. It's a lot more volatile. You don't know how much you're going to earn a month, especially, you know, if you have like things like a mortgage or car payments and things like that. Like, well, what's going to happen in, like, for example, December, where there's Christmas holidays and people are away and people don't really have that disposable income to spend on healthcare. People should, but you know, we know differently. But it's so much more volatile, because I'm in a similar situation where I have a salary position and we don't make as much, but you have that financial stability.
Which like I said, that was like, for me, that was an important thing. And to be in a place that like where I'm able to grow, like as an osteopath, but also like within the osteopathic profession, but then also within like my own like profession, in terms of like not just being good at osteopathy, but being able to learn how to run a business or manage like not colleagues, but manage a business in a way. And that was what this practice that I'm working at now is able to offer me. Whereas if working at like a smaller clinic, I don't know if there's so much room for growth in all the different other aspects.
So that's really interesting, because obviously I don't work in private practice myself, so I haven't seen that other side. But in private practice, I can imagine like you hit a certain threshold, and then where do you go from there? Do you negotiate a percentage split? And financially, it's great, but where's the growth with that? Where's the opportunities with that? Do you work for different clinics? Do you work for multiple clinics? Do you work for one clinic? Whereas it sounds like in a bigger practice like yours, there's a lot more opportunity for growth.
Yeah, totally. Like on the business side of things, and not necessarily just on the osteopathic side of things. And that was what was really important for me. And I think also for me getting the job, my managers, bosses who interviewed me said that, we could see that you're not just here just for the osteo and just for us to feed you patients. You want to be part of the business as well, which probably like good to say in your interview for those that are new graduates. You're interested in like the business growing and not just yourself growing, and like what you can give back to the business.
You talked about sort of like at one point, you know, treating loads of patients in a given month, and I imagine sort of pre-COVID that would have been even more.
No, actually, I've treated more post-COVID than, like, June has been my biggest month, which is crazy.
That's so interesting. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because, so we've done like, coming back to work, we've done a phased reopening in terms of there's, 10, 11 osteopaths that work at the clinic. And I was part of the phase 1 where only 4 osteos came back, and I was the only female. So I think that is the reason why less osteos and more patients. So
how do you manage, like, treating for that longer period of time, how those many patients, in terms of your hands, your body, like I get tired.
Yeah. So my hours, like I work long days. I work 9 till 8, which is like a long, yeah, it's taking its toll. If I'm being completely honest, it's taking its toll. From So I was I was really glad that lockdown happened in a sense, because I was getting to a point where I was just a bit quite exhausted, and my work-life balance wasn't quite on level. And the 9 weeks, like, even though it was nervous and scary, what with everything that was going on in the world, and like not much control over it, and just like sort of quite overwhelming, it was nice to have, I think in the end I had 9 weeks off doing not really very much. Once we sorted like finances out and everything, and luckily because I was employed, we were able to go onto furlough. Then I was able to just calm down and relax and like rejuvenate in a way. But yeah, coming back and working those long hours, it is tiring. Like I just have to make sure that I put in breaks. Like because we're in control of our like schedule on Clinico, every 3 patients I'd put in a 15-minute break. And I was getting into a really good habit of that actually before lockdown. And then since lockdown's happened, we're adding on actually for every patient there's a 10-15 minute gap after, so that we have enough time to clean the room, sort the room out. So that gap is like a saving grace, really. Gives me a bit of like breathing time to calm down from like the patient and get into like a clear headspace, and then bring the new patient in. But it's definitely like my own self-care needs to be worked on.
Yeah, we need to get you like a mud mask or something.
Yeah.
Because I was having a conversation with work colleagues about sort of this balance of sustainability where,
Yeah.
okay, and where, you can do those 12, 13-hour days, but how long can you actually do that for before
Yeah,
you burn out?
sustainability. Yeah. And that's a phrase that like keeps coming into conversation recently, is like burnout. Like you need to be careful that that doesn't happen. And doing the long days, or you leave the house at like 7, 8 and you don't get back till 9, it's like, it's definitely not sustainable. But my bosses are good in the sense that like I'll just have really honest and open conversations with them. Like before we came back to working after lockdown, I like rang my bosses and I was like, look, I'm nervous about coming back because I'm nervous about getting tired, and like I want to be able to be committed to the business and work and do my hours, but it needs to be sustainable, so I can not just do it like for a few months, but keep doing it for a few years. So we're all like in conversation, and they're always happy to hear what we have to say, and they make changes accordingly if they can. But yeah, it's still something that I need to put a bit more effort into.
Check in with yourself every so often.
Yeah, because like treating and talking to patients every day, sometimes I complain, I'm like, oh, I wish I just had a normal desk job where I could just be in the office and it doesn't matter if I'm late, it doesn't matter if I'm 10 minutes late, there's no one waiting for me, and I could just sit down, and if I get a little bored on my computer I can just log on to the internet and do some own like personal admin stuff, and then log back off and then do a bit of work. Whereas with osteopathy it's so full on. Like if you've got a full list of patients, like as amazing as that is, it's also like super tiring because you have to be on the ball, listening, engaging with the patient, and like caring for them and showing that you empathize with them from like 9 up until 8 o'clock. Like that is exhausting.
You have to be the same with your first patient as with your
Yeah,
last patient.
yeah. And
Everything.
I remember in my like first few months, the patients that would come in at like 6-7 o'clock, they were not getting a good show. Like I would get my left and rights confused. I'd start like calling the shoulder the elbow, like I just get all my like anatomy mixed up, and it was just because I was tired. I was just, because in BCom clinic we were nowhere near as busy, you know, like because there was a few changes in the clinic, so we didn't have that many NHS patients anymore. So we were seeing maybe like 2 or 3 patients a session if we were lucky, to going to seeing like 10, 11 patients a day is like a big change.
Yeah, and especially during the summer clinic for me, I don't know if you were in the first half, the second half, but in the first half we were booked solid.
Yeah.
And so we were seeing those 10 patients a day. And luckily, I mean, we were only in clinic, what, 3-4 days a week at summer?
Yeah, 3 or something, yeah.
And even on the days that we weren't in there, I literally would just stay in bed and cocoon myself because I was freaking exhausted.
Yeah.
But we don't have that option now. You have to get up the next day and go to work and, you know, be an adult, and it sucks sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like cycling to work and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Like, I didn't really believe in Monday morning blues, but like now I totally get it. Like the weekends aren't long enough and you get to work and my mum always said, like, just don't try not to think about work until you get to work, because as soon as you get there, it's fine. Like, you can do it. You know that you can do it. As soon as you're with your first patient, it's just like normal again, like it was like midweek. But
absolutely. And I'm so appreciative of having this type of conversation, because a lot of what you see on Instagram and any other social media is people being perky and brilliant. And I love my job, but sometimes I have bad days. I'm tired, you know, I haven't eaten right, I haven't exercised, so I'm just lethargic. And that's not what people are posting, obviously, for obvious reasons. But I really appreciate having this kind of conversation, because no one's saying this stuff. And it's
it's hard sometimes.
And it's like, right day at clinic, and I'm like, no.
No.
It wasn't. It was a mediocre day.
And
I did good stuff and bad stuff, and outweigh itself and balance out. But I'm gonna have some chocolate tonight.
I'm just gonna quickly eat some like baked beans on toast and then get into bed.
And that for me was the thing, because obviously my hours aren't as long as yours, but for me it was the commute that would almost kill me. It was like almost 2 hours each way, and I would actually come home, shower, crawl into bed. I'm like, I don't even want to eat. And obviously, you know, it's like you said, it's the self-care, it's taking care of all these different aspects of your life, you know, the social, the mental, the physical, the you know, relationships if you're in one, you know, it's all these other caveats that just sort of fall away at the side, because it just becomes about work, and you can't do
ever consuming. And since being back after lockdown, I found that like during lockdown I was like ringing my friends like every week, you know, I was catching up with everyone. And then it was like 6 weeks after we'd been back to work, and I was like, I'm so sorry I haven't called you. I've been so busy. And then at the weekends and even in the evenings, because I get back so late, I don't want to call anyone. And the weekends I just want to be like not really doing much, because talking to patients and being engaging with patients all week is like mentally exhausting. And you're just like, at the end of the day, you don't want to talk to anyone. And I feel sorry for my partner Finn, who's just like, oh, how was your day? I'm like, yeah, fine.
That's so funny, because I have a similar thing. Not that I have a partner named Finn, but obviously with flatmates, I come home and they're like, oh, how was your day? And I'm like, I am just going to go for a shower, just talk to me for 20 minutes, and then I will be a bit more human. And I don't want anyone listening to think that we're complaining about our jobs or anything, because we're really lucky to be doing what we do. And we really love what we do, genuinely. It's like anyone who even has like, I don't know, a 9-to-5 job even. You know, sometimes you just have bad days.
And I mean, it is important to reiterate that I feel like being an osteopath is a very like it's a very privileged position to be in, and you have to like respect that. So after lockdown, I treated this patient, and it was an elderly gentleman, and he was like so appreciative to have the treatment, because he'd not had any human contact because he'd been shielding for like nearly 12 weeks. And he came in the second time and he was like, yeah, I just felt so good after my treatment. And it was just because somebody had like spent the time just to talk to him, and like that hands-on like touch and therapy as well. Like it's a privileged like job and position to be in, because you're with people and you're helping people. Yeah, it's amazing. When it goes right, it's amazing.
Yeah, so true. When it goes right, I love that. So what were I know we've sort of touched upon this, but like, what were your expectations after graduating? Did you have ideas of what you'd be doing, how you'd be working? And is that the same to what you're doing now?
It's really interesting. Like after graduating, I kind of didn't really know, like have a plan. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll just start this job, and we'll see what happens. But then a few weeks leading up to me starting, they sent like me like an email saying, okay, what are your expectations? What are your plans? And I think I was on holiday with my family, and my mum and dad are like project managers, you know, like in there, they're very much like, okay, so let's get a spreadsheet out, an Excel document, and we'll write down like your your aims and your like 2-year plan, 1-year plan, like what your aims for like your osteopathic profession or your like business profession. So I actually ended up making like a bit of a, like, do you call them like aims or objectives, like what I want to have achieved by achievements by like 6 months or 12 months or a year. And I was actually looking at it the other day, and I've like ticked off a fair few things. So I shared it with my managers. So the main one was that like I wanted to get like a patient list. I wanted to have like, I said a full patient list. I don't really know what that means, because I don't know how you get a full patient list. But to be treating a certain amount of patients a month, and to understand how the business runs, and to also become a Pilates instructor, which I achieved.
Well done.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
So that seemed sound like it was pretty good to have done that a year on, to come out of lockdown having achieved that, because that was my aim actually. I was learning with the APPI school, so the Australian Physiotherapy and Pilates Institute. So it's a little bit more clinical Pilates than maybe the more classical Pilates, I think. And that has really helped my like exercise prescription, rehab, like understanding. And it's really fun to do.
Isn't it? And
Yeah.
we've done sessions together, so I know how good you are at it as well. So, and obviously Pilates runs through my blood, so I absolutely love it.
It's a hot topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, my aims or like expectations were to just get good at doing osteopathy. Like I wasn't gonna go and try and specialize down into any area. I knew that I wanted to learn and be able to teach Pilates, so I knew that I wanted to do that within the first year. But I didn't really see that as like, that was kind of an add-on, not really like going down to specializing. And still now, I don't really know if I want to specialize down into any particular area. I just want to get really good at what I'm doing. So that was kind of like a very broad goal for me to try and reach. And I think that will take many, many, many years, but it's a start.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because often, at least when you graduate, you have all these ideas, and you want to do pediatrics, or you want to specialize in visual, and those are all really good sort of branches and add-ons to it. But I think sometimes you just need the time to get your hands on patients, to develop your own practice, to understand what you like, what you don't, and where you want to go with it, really. Because like you said before, it is such a privileged profession, and there are so many things you can do with it that it's almost, it feels infinite, and you're never going to know everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so just spending that time sort of rooted, it sounds like you had really, you know, your parents were really good at grounding you in that way.
Yeah, no, they're
And
amazing.
saying,
Yeah.
okay, let's get a spreadsheet out. What are your aims? Like, I don't think any parents are doing that. I don't think my parents would have done that. My mum knows how to work an iPad now, so maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but that is so them though. That is their like line of work. So actually, yeah, I was very appreciative of that because it kind of gave me like a bit of a timeline and something to work towards, and then I can look back at it when it gets to August when I've been working for a year, like, oh cool, like I've actually achieved some stuff, because you can kind of just keep plodding on and keep going and going and going, and then like you're like feeling tired and work's just getting a bit much and like, why am I doing this, what have I achieved, what have I done? And then actually when you look back at it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm doing all right.
And being able to meet those aims, especially in a year like 2020 has been, that's huge, I think, because I think a lot of my aims have just been paused. It's not going to happen this year. Or if it is, it's going to happen very late this year.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year. It's been a crazy year.
And so what do you think, you talked about sort of the having that little bit of a break during COVID and the lockdown to sort of think about your self-care and things like that. Have you come away from anything else from having that break that you think, okay, this is what I want to do and this is how I want to change, if there was anything you wanted to change?
I think, yeah, during lockdown, I was very much like, I need to get my work-life balance in order. I need to have more life than more work. And I need to just take things a lot slower, like try not to rush through my day whilst at work, not just to like come out at the end of the day like, wow, what just happened? And also less so during lockdown, but more within the past 6 weeks, like I kind of had this like realization that patients don't need to get better after like the second or third treatment and it's not a failure if they don't, and it's okay if they're still coming back after the third, fourth treatment saying, yeah, I'm still in pain, and that's okay, because I think I was really like giving myself a really hard time when patients would come back and they would be like, after the first or second treatment, like, no, I'm still in pain, like, and I would really take that on myself. I'd be like, oh, I'm not good at this, what am I doing? I don't have any idea what I'm doing, maybe I should just refer them on to somebody else who's got more experience. But I don't know why I was thinking about it, but it kind of just came into my head the other day, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Like, people won't just get better like that. Like, I haven't got magic hands, like it will take its time. But the thing about the work-life balance, yeah, it kind of hasn't happened after lockdown.
But that's a work in progress for everyone.
Yeah. And I think it kind of made me think, like, where do I see myself in like the next 2 years or maybe the next 5 years? Like, what do I really want to be doing? And since doing the Pilates, I definitely want to be incorporating that more into my practice. And I'd really love to do like maybe a 50-50 split of like osteo and Pilates in general. But that might take a few years to do. And I think further down the line, I'd eventually like to either be part of like expanding the business that I'm already in, like maybe, being more like managerial, have a managerial role, or opening up my own place, wherever that might be. But that's further down the line. Yeah, I think that answered your question.
Yeah, I've asked a lot of questions. I'm inquisitive. And what I really like about the Pilates, at least for me, is that it's not so intense on your hands as well.
Yeah.
So it gives you that bit of a break from your hands, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still correcting people and, maneuvering people, of course, but it's, because after a full day, like, your hands are tired, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done that many one-to-one Pilates sessions yet. I've only done a few since lockdown, and they have been really good fun because it's less hands-on. It's a lot easier on the body, and you can kind of chill out a little bit and make the patient do all the work. It's nice.
Just like what I do on Zoom. I just sit here and then I tell people what to do. It's great. In my Pilates sessions, I mean, in case anyone. Um, I really want to get you back and really explore that whole journey for into Pilates. I think that's fascinating, especially because we've trained with different companies to see what it's like and how you integrate Pilates into your rehab, into your osteopathy. Because I think it's one thing that we definitely have a bit of experience with, of course, when we're at school, but there's not a huge emphasis on rehabilitation in comparison to, say, physiotherapists, for example, who are amazing at it.
Yeah.
And so,
there's kind of a big gap, isn't there?
And you learn as you go along, but I feel like there's this, at least when you start off, there's this inequality between what physiotherapists know in terms of rehabilitation, what we know initially, and you're sort of just playing catch up. So Pilates is such a great modality in which to administer that, and you have all these different levels at which you can, you can tailor. For the person.
And I think that was because I kind of went into learning about Pilates and doing the courses without really knowing too much. And the courses were amazing. They were just 3 lots of 2-day courses that you could do at, like, osteopaths and physiotherapists could already do, because they've already got that, like, background, anatomical, physiological, like, knowledge. And for me, it was mainly physios that were on the course as well. So I was like maybe one of 2 or 3 other osteos on the course, and it was so interesting actually learning from them and like listening to what they had to say about rehabilitation and exercise prescription, because I felt that was really why I wanted to go on and do Pilates, because I felt there was a real lack in my knowledge, and that I was just prescribing the same like handful of exercises to my patients, and I really like wanted to be able to give my patients the best like opportunity to do like work outside of the clinic room. So I felt like what I was giving them to do outside of the the clinical setting wasn't that great. So it was a really great experience learning from the physios, because their knowledge was just so much more than what we were taught.
And was that purely sort of mat work stuff?
All mat work. All mat work.
Wait till you get on the equipment. It's so much fun. We have to have like a whole dedicated episode.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I love it, but then I'm a bit biased. So
no, I've never done it before. I'd love to.
We need to get you on equipment.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it. And when you get on some of the other pieces and you can see how detailed and intricate those movements can be, it just opens up this whole world.
Cool.
I was trying not to think of Aladdin there. I was like, don't say it. Don't say a whole new world. Because I can't sing as well. But coming back then, is there anything that you wish you had known, or you'd say to somebody? Because obviously we've been, a year or so in practice now. Is there anything that you wish you had known when you graduated that you've learned and developed?
I think like what I was saying earlier is that about that whole thing of that patients don't have to get better after treating them for like 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions. Like, don't set way too high expectations of yourself, and that it's okay that they don't get better. Like you can't treat everything. I think that was the main thing, and I've only just realized that in the past few weeks. So yeah.
So in a way, we were lucky that not that we were lucky COVID happened, I should rephrase that. We were lucky that some people were able to get that break because of the lockdown situation, in which to, be a bit more reflective and just reprioritize things that sometimes, you get on this sort of train and you keep going until somebody says stop, and somebody said stop this year. They were like, everyone get out and we'll see you in a couple of months.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. What makes you where do you draw your energy from? Who inspires you? Not just like within, let's just say within osteopathy, even outside of the profession, where do you derive your inspiration from? Where do you keep going?
In terms of like keeping
Just
going
your
with work,
interests.
or
Yeah, what are you interested in? What CPD have you done that's been really interesting? Or
so I think the the main CPD that I've been doing is the Pilates stuff, because that I've been doing that since December, November. So yeah, that for me that's been my main CPD actually over the past few months. Sorry, I've got a fly in my glasses. Um, and I think that has recently been giving me lots of like inspiration, and has, I feel, developed my like practice in a way. I use that on I use it on nearly every patient. I'm like, at the end of the session, now I'm just gonna give you a little Pilates based exercise. And some are like rolling their eyes like, no, get lost, and others are really like intrigued because you can really go into like so much detail with it, and it makes sense for a lot of patients. And Pilates has probably been like spoken to them, or like the word has been like spoken to them many times. They're like, oh, okay, here's somebody talking to me about it that's got a little bit of knowledge about it,
and they're going to show it to you.
Yeah. So that's probably the most interesting thing, like CPD wise, I've been doing recently. Like sometimes, like as cliche as it sounds, I get my energy from the patients sometimes, even though occasionally they wear you out and they're like exhausting, and some of them come in really negative and they take all of your energy. Others like really do give you energy when things go right and you help them, or when they're like appreciative of what you do, and they get better. Like that can give me quite a lot of energy. Like when you've had a good day in clinic, you're like, yeah, come on, bring it on. But then on the opposite side of that, when you've had a really bad day and there's been patients that really drain your energy, then yeah, you have to get your like inspiration and energy from outside of work.
Yeah, for me it's chocolate.
I think like for me the main thing is that it is a really privileged job to be working in, and to be able to be that person, or to be there for a person when they're in a space that's like out of their control, or like quite has quite a lot of fear attached to it, and just to be able to educate the person in a way, like just share your knowledge. That's quite like for me it's quite an important and privileged thing to be able to do. It's not necessarily sometimes your hands-on that helps. It's just making things clear for them that actually the pain that they're feeling isn't all that bad, and it's not anything like really serious. They're not going to die, and it's really important, and to be able to use like the right vocabulary to comfort people. And I think for me, yeah, it's a privileged.
I
Yeah,
think privilege is the right word, because it sums up everything that encapsulates being able to talk to people, to help people, to feel fulfilled, and that we don't take it for granted.
I have to say, during lockdown, I didn't really do much CPD. Like I got back to work and everyone was talking about what CPD they'd signed up to. And I was like, kind of like, oh crap. Yeah, maybe I should have been doing that. Like work organized 1 or 2 sessions, a really interesting one on ankylosing spondylitis that just showed that everything we learned at uni was just so out of date. But you know, gives us like the basic foundation. And they organize like a communication and consent CPD, which, as boring as it sounded, was actually like really good, because I don't really feel like we were taught it that well at school. Like it was kind of it was drilled into us that we needed to do it properly, but we weren't really given the words on how to properly ask to do like a neck manipulation or thoracic, lumbar. So they were quite good. But in terms of like, where do I draw my energy from and my energy from? That's a good one. I haven't really thought about that.
Something to think.
Probably like cliche, or like my partner Finn, my family. Yeah, I don't really know. In terms of just like to keep going and yeah, probably Finn mainly.
Yeah. That's pretty
My
important
family.
too.
Yeah. He's an important guy.
Absolutely. I had so much fun just talking to you.
Yeah.
Um,
It's been good fun.
yeah, especially since we haven't seen each other in ages.
I know. Yeah.
Where can people find you, either in practice or on social media?
So I'm not on any social media in terms of like work stuff, but I'm working at the Bodytonic Clinic, and I work from their Canada Water branch, so Southeast London, and also in their Stratford branch, so in East London.
Perfect.
I'm
And
there 5 days a week, Tuesday to Saturday.
nice. And I can attest to your skills because obviously we treated each other when we lived together, and it was, I mean, I loved it.
Yeah.
So
Thank
I'm
you.
very envious of the patients that get to come in and just be in a room with you. And because what I remember from uni is you were just ridiculously smart.
Oh.
And, and I just remember like, oh my God, how does she remember all this stuff? So if they're getting a fraction of what I receive from you, they are
Oh,
in
bless
very,
you.
very good hands.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So nice.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
pleasure.
hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Yeah, we should
Yeah.
do. We should meet up. Yeah.
Thanks.